In many organizations, the process of approving supplier invoices is the most time-consuming and error-prone step of the procurement cycle. SpendMap complements your current accounts payable system by replacing a cumbersome manual invoice approval process with a fast and efficient online system. You can quickly and easily approve supplier invoices for payment in SpendMap, and once approved, the invoices can be sent to your accounts payable system for processing using the built-in AP interface. We talk about different types of invoices in SpendMap, but there's really only one type of invoice, when your supplier bills you for something that you've purchased. But there's a few different ways to approve invoices in SpendMap, depending on the circumstances. So today we're going to review the three most common types of invoices, including PO-related invoices, invoice discrepancies, and non-PO invoices. SpendMap uses a three-way matching mechanism to make it easy to approve invoices for items that are on purchase orders. That is, you can match the supplier's invoice to the purchase order and packing slip that are already in the system to approve the payment. When an invoice comes in from your supplier, you can just pull up the purchase order and receipt information on screen here in your invoice work area. Obviously, if you didn't order the products or services, there would be no PO to select, and if you didn't receive the items, there'd be no packing slips, so it's pretty easy to see if you shouldn't be paying an invoice. To complete the three-way match, just click these checkboxes to select individual receipts or packing slips, or to save time for larger orders, you can use this button to match the invoice to all open packing slips in one click. So this is your control mechanism. Checking these boxes is the equivalent of stapling a paper invoice to a paper PO and packing slip in a manual environment. By checking these boxes and associating the packing slips with the invoice, it will consume or reserve those receipt transactions for this invoice. And the packing slips won't be there the next time around, for example, if the supplier double invoices you. Aside from being a quick and easy way to do paperless three-way matching, most of the data entry for each invoice is done for you. Take a look up here at the top of the screen. These fields carried forward from the PO that you selected, and unless something has changed since the PO was created, there's nothing more to key in here. And if I click to get to the details of a line item, you'll see that SpendMap already has the description from the PO, the account coding, and of course the dollar amounts and taxes. Since we're going to be passing all these details to your accounting system through the built-in AP interface, that's a bunch less data entry for each and every invoice compared to manually keying a dozen or so fields for each invoice directly into your accounting system. While an invoice that perfectly matches an approved purchase order would typically not need any more approvals, many organizations will require additional approvals when invoices don't match the original purchase order. We call this an invoice discrepancy. Discrepancies might be the result of an overshipment, a difference in the taxes between the PO and the invoice, maybe a freight charge that wasn't on the PO, or maybe just a unit price discrepancy. For this example, I'll change the dollar value here. Regardless of the reason, when an invoice doesn't match the original PO, the invoice discrepancy can be routed for online approval before releasing the invoice for payment and sending it over to your accounts payable system. So the idea here is that whoever's doing the invoice matching can get the paperwork off their desk, the invoices that match the associated purchase orders will be approved immediately and go through the AP interface to your accounting system right away, and any invoice discrepancies will remain on hold until they're either approved or rejected. As far as the approval process itself goes, it's just like approving a new requisition in SpendMap. The approver can receive an automatic email notification, and then they can approve or reject the invoice discrepancy right from the body of the email message itself, or they can log into SpendMap on their PC, tablets, or phones to approve the invoices, in which case they'll see the invoice discrepancies in their approval utility alongside anything else that they need to approve. While we always advocate for pre-purchase requisition approval rather than waiting for the invoice to show up before deciding whether or not you want to spend the money, in some cases it's just not practical to create a purchase order for everything that you buy. The most common examples are things like rent and utilities. SpendMap handles non-PO invoices in very much the same way it handles invoice discrepancies. If you think about it, a non-PO invoice is just like a discrepancy in that the invoice has no matching pre-approved purchase order. When you add a new non-PO invoice, you'll be brought to the screen where you can fill in the invoice header details. SpendMap will default the fields when it can, but there will be a bit more data entry for non-PO invoices since we don't have an existing order to default the fields from. Once you fill in the header details, you'll have a chance to fill in the line item details like the account coding, prices, and taxes. And again, when you're done, non-PO invoices can be routed for online approval, just like new requisitions and invoice discrepancies. Once your supplier invoices are approved for payment in SpendMap, they need to get over to your accounts payable system, since that system will still need to process payment to the suppliers and post the invoice transactions to your general ledger as it does today. To avoid having to enter invoices in two separate systems, SpendMap's accounts payable interface can be used to transfer the approved invoices to your AP system electronically. Once imported into your AP system, the invoices would typically reside in a pending invoice batch, just like they would if you keyed them in there manually. At that point, you can process the invoices to cut checks to your suppliers, post to your general ledger, or anything else that your accounting or ERP system does with those invoices today. So those are the basics of how you can streamline your invoice approval process with SpendMap. And just as a reminder, if you'd like to make faster progress, our client services team is always here to help with support, training, and implementation consulting services.